Welcome to the Mamatoosa podcast. I'm your host, Atusa Benji. Welcome to the Mamatoosa podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I'm so excited to see your face, and I am so honored to have you on because, well, you're incredible. As you know, I have the highest of love and esteem.
You know the feeling is likewise.
Thank you. You tell me how we know each other so that we can
Okay.
start the podcast in that way.
You have been my midwife twice over, but so much more than that. Like coming into my first pregnancy experience, it was like I was being like enveloped in this warm maternal love in a way that like I just never anticipated prenatal care would be that way. And I just felt such like a strong connection to you. And then you helped welcome my second child into the world as well. And that's how we know each other. And you just feel like a part of my little family.
It means just so much coming from you and the journey that we've shared together, both journeys, and you
Yeah.
really do become family. And I think especially when you share such intimate moments,
Yeah.
some of them unexpected and difficult
Yeah.
and challenging, and
hmm
some of them buttery and beautiful and easy.
Like, I just can't imagine having shared those intimate moments like you're talking about with somebody that, like, didn't feel like family or didn't have that warmth. Like, that just feels like such a foreign experience to even try and imagine.
And the first time we did it was well, I didn't do it, you did it, but I was part of the team was during the pandemic
Yeah.
where the world was crazy. And
Yes.
what made you choose midwifery care at that time with your first baby?
Since I was very young, I always wanted to be a mom. Like it was just such a cornerstone for me since I was little. I just felt this pull to motherhood. Like I remember like even as a little kid playing with dolls, like the feeling being very intense. And like a lot of my choices in life and growth of life have been like with that goal in mind, with reaching towards that. And so when I got pregnant with my first child, I was like gung ho excited. I had so much enthusiasm and energy, and I was researching everything. I wanted to like have all the tools under my belt. I wanted to understand how everything worked. I like was so fascinated by the entire process, and I kind of like came across midwifery care as an option, and I just felt a little more called to the midwifery care model. It just felt more in line with like my values and like just who I was as a person. And so like my first concern was just like what is the safety risk doing this versus hospital births, and like through my interviewing different midwiferys in my area, and talking to an OB, I just felt like this was just a better path for me, and I am so grateful I went down this path. Even given my two very different experiences, I still feel that it was like a great path for me, and I feel like grateful.
What were the values that were aligning that you're referring to?
For me, like I am very like I feel like I sit on both ends with like I appreciate and love Western medicine because so many people wouldn't be here or safe without it. Like I really think it's wonderful. But then at the same time, when I was learning about like what physiologically happens in your body during birth and like the statistics on like certain medical interventions, I just felt like I want to give my body its best chance to do its thing naturally. And I don't know how that's going to pan out. Because I had never done it before. So I was like, I don't know if my body is going to be suited for this or not, but like I want to give it its best chance to do things without intervention. Like if it came down to it, I would be the first person to say, do whatever you need to do to keep my baby safe. But like I wanted to try without that being pushed, and I started with an OB in my first trimester, and I just felt like she wasn't answering the questions that I wanted. I didn't feel like I was a participant in the care model. I felt like it was stuff, everything was just being done to me. My opinion, my questions like weren't given time, weren't being respected. And I was like, is this the person that I want with me during my most vulnerable moments? Like in a scary situation, I want somebody that is going to respect my opinion too and like give me, I don't know everything. I'm not a medical professional, but I wanted somebody that was going to in those moments if things were to go a certain way. I wanted somebody that was going to have the respect for me to be like, "Hey, this is what's going down. This is what's going to happen. This is my opinion. Are you cool with that?" And like then I could be like, "Absolutely, whatever. I trust you. I want my baby to be safe. Whatever medical intervention needs to happen, do it." But like I didn't want things just done to me without the respect of that relationship. And I felt very much that way in my OB care in the first trimester.
And what made you choose midwifery out of hospital care versus midwifery in hospital?
I think I interviewed there was really only one option that I found for midwifery in hospital. Um, And when I was interviewing the different options, I just felt more connected to the team of midwives at Graceful. And I really liked it seems silly now because having given birth twice, birth it has its own plan. But like at the time I was like, wow, I really like feel like I would love the opportunity for a water birth because I always have loved the water and like I feel it's very calming and like the hospital care for midwifery also did not have that option. So like just weighing those two things together, I decided to go with Graceful for my first birth.
And so you had a birth center birth.
Yes, yeah.
And what made you do that versus a home birth?
We live in an apartment and I just did not feel like it would be a comfortable space. And like in all my prepping for birth and my like trying to educate myself, I kind of like fell onto the belief that I need to be super comfortable in my most vulnerable state to allow myself to like ride the waves and to allow myself to accept these like tough feelings and things that my body was going to go through. And I didn't want my brain distracted by like the neighbors or the landlord or just I just didn't feel like it was going to be a safe space where I could really tune out and feel like vulnerable.
I love that because so much of birth is in the primal part of the brain, and that prefrontal cortex, once it gets stimulated and gets going, it can
Mhm.
really be a hindrance to the primal brain trying to shut off and be in that primal birth zone,
Yeah.
cave, land, whatever you want to call it. And in an apartment setting, who's down the hall, and is the manager going to come knock on the door,
Hmm.
and is their family, and how's that going to look? Are they going to show up without being invited? And all of those things that people talk about when they're deciding to have an out of hospital birth. And not all birthplaces are for all births. There's situations where it really isn't an appropriate time or a place to decide to have a baby in that setting. And I think it was very intuitive of you to be like, nope, I'm not going to be in my most primal zone in this
Yeah.
setting. And so you sought the birth center option, and we were knee deep in masks and
Hmm.
sanitizing gel. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like to be pregnant at that time. Did that start any feelings of being afraid in your body? What was
Oh
happening?
yeah, I definitely had like pretty severe antenatal anxiety. Would be what I would call it. And then that definitely transformed into pretty severe postpartum anxiety after my first was born. Um, and yeah, it was a very hard time to be pregnant. I think other mothers I've talked to that were pregnant during the same time, like a lot of them felt similarly, for many different reasons, not just the fear of trying to protect this brand new raw human being from all these scary outside forces that felt like were coming for them, but then also like the cultural issues of like it was a very and still is like very divided time of like suddenly it was like a huge issue if family members wanted to get vaccinated or not vaccinated, wear a mask, not wear a mask. Like everybody got like very digging their heels in on what they felt comfortable with. And like it was hard as a mom because there's already these feelings of isolating and loneliness. And I was sitting there like, my child, life is on the line. Like that's what it felt so intensely to me. And I was like, why is this such a problem for everybody to just respect how I feel about it? Um, and so like there was that issue as well, like the trying to keep her safe from us getting sick with this still relatively unknown illness that like could be very dangerous to her in pregnancy and after she was born. But then also the like we set this boundary of like this is what we feel comfortable with after she's born and we totally respect if you don't want to follow it to family members, but like we can't have you around our newborn if you this is what we feel comfortable with. And obviously that causes a lot of kicked up feelings and issues and it was just like a very and still is kind of reeling from that a very divided time on like how people felt about this whole situation, how people were navigating with their own feelings of what was going on.
Was the family aware that you were planning an out of hospital birth?
Yes.
And there was support in that area, or was
Yeah,
there?
there generally actually was pretty big support. My mom is not really about Western medicine at all. I kind of feel like I sit on the fence. Like I see so much amazing benefit and appreciation to it, but I also feel like there's a time and a place for it. And my mom is like not really into it. And so she, when I was explaining to her like why I wanted to have a out of hospital birth, like she was actually incredibly supportive. And she's like, I wish I had this sort of education when I was having my babies because I probably would have chosen that. I'm one of three and I'm the oldest. And with myself and my middle sister, my mom had a hospital birth, had an epidural, had a kind of regular birth experience. Nothing like crazy happened. But with my youngest sister, she was going so fast because my family has a history of very fast births. And when she got to the hospital, she didn't have time to get the epidural because my sister was coming so fast. And she said that that was her best birthing experience when she did not have time to get the epidural. And like she wishes she had done that all three times. But I think that she kind of was giving birth in a time where it was like, this is just what you do. You don't know that you have options.
Right. Right. And it's so interesting that one person's elation, empowerment can be another person's trauma. Because how
Totally.
many times have you heard, with my third baby, there was no time to get, or my fourth baby, or my fifth baby, or my second baby, there was no time to get the epidural. And I was devastated and scared and
Yeah,
traumatized. And next time I'm going to the hospital before I'm in labor, because I don't ever want that to happen again.
totally. As I like connect with like other moms, I feel very like changed by this experience and very called to it and very connected to like other birthing people and other nursing people because that's huge to me as well. Like I find there's such important like nuance in the conversation that one size doesn't fit all and like what somebody's happy is not necessarily somebody else's happy and I don't know. I feel like the key is just that everybody is given all the options, the pros and cons of every option, so that they can feel empowered to make the right choice for themselves and supported by their team to make whatever that choice is for themselves. And I definitely felt that way after my second Zane's birth is like a situation that could have been totally traumatic and was in some ways traumatic was made so much better by having a team that was 100% supporting me and guiding me and it didn't feel like something that was being done to me but instead something that I was being led together with my medical team.
I love that so much. What would you say to the person who says out of hospital birth is ignorant and dangerous and risky, and people who choose that option are playing with fire or playing Russian roulette?
I think that I would just say that it's dangerous. It could be dangerous to give birth in a hospital as well. Like you never know what life has planned for you. And I think that the midwifery care, if you're with people that are knowledgeable, educated, certified, and you can feel them out when you're interviewing people. You get to choose who your team is. If you're with those people, they're not going to let it get to a point where it is dangerous for you. There's so much prenatal care that is done. It's not like somebody just shows up at your house while you're in the middle of labor to deliver your baby. If there are any red flags before you're going into labor, you're getting transferred to OB care. Like you're not a safe person to give birth out of hospital if you are having high risk red flags.
And so tell me about your first birth.
It was amazing. So I went into it with this great care team. There was a lot of anxiety like the week leading up to her being born. Not that I knew that she was coming, but there was a lot of stuff like going on with COVID as we touched on. And so like I was just terrified that we were going to get sick as she was being born because the cases were really high in my area. And so there was just a lot of out of control, the unknown, already going into a situation that's out of control, the unknown. I just kind of focused on all the things I'd learned. I found it very personally comforting to know physiologically what was happening in my body. And so I leaned back on that learnings that I had as the contractions started, and it was really great. My water broke first before anything really started. I'm sure that I was maybe having contractions or dilating beforehand, but I didn't feel them. My water broke, and then the contractions were like 2 to 3 minutes apart, like immediately, basically. And I called up, made a plan to get to the birth center. I got there. They asked, again, the informed consent, asked if I wanted to be checked, and I was already 8 centimeters. This was like an hour after my water broke. And I was like definitely in the throes of it, and like that primal brain kicked in, and I didn't really feel like it was like painful at all. It was just like the hardest workout of my life is what it felt like. And it's so interesting because like I guess the things that were kind of the thoughts that were floating around in my head were not necessarily what I think everybody else in the room was hearing coming out of my mouth. So it was interesting, like hearing other people's perspective afterwards that were in the room, and then also watching my birth video. And I was like, it sounds like that, and I look like that, but that's not what I was thinking. So just really like the concept of time was erased. I had no idea how long, even though it was very quick, I had no idea like what was happening with time. The transitional stage was really hard for me. I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to be able to get through this? Because it was just the pressure was so intense at that stage right before I started pushing that the minute I guess she like her head came down through the lip, like I felt this wave of peace and calm overcome me for the pushing stage. And I was in the water at that point, and I thought, my body just said, you need to get up. And I was like, okay, I need to get up. Like, I don't know where it came from, but I just was like, I need to get up. And it just, my body totally guided me. And we tried a couple different positions on the bed, and it was like, immediately my body would go, no, that's not right. That's not right. And then eventually I was standing up, and I asked my midwives to stack pillows for me on the bed. And so I stood up, and I was kind of squatting for when I felt the urge to push, and then I would lean over, kind of rest my head on the pillows, and I literally felt like I was on a cloud. I was like such a peaceful, euphoric like experience, the pushing stage for me. And then I delivered her head, and then she was born. And like you can hear, I've watched her birth video 1,000 times because it just makes me cry, happy tears, like it's so beautiful. And you hear my husband like crying, full of emotion, like she's here, and I'm like, is she okay? Because I can't see, because I'm like standing up, and Heba had caught her, and then Atusa, you were drying her off, and you were like, she's beautiful, she's great, she has so much hair. I've watched it so many times I could like say it verbatim.
Oh.
And it's just, I could just see the love in the room and the support, and it's really amazing. There is like after having Zane's birth, which I'm sure we'll go into, but like I look back on that video and I actually see like some of the red flags of what happened to Zayn at the end of the video. And like it makes me realize when I was thinking about like kind of what we were going to talk about, like the big thing that came to mind for me was duality. Is like I have so much gratefulness, but then so much like disappointment and like I'm so proud of myself, but then I'm also like ashamed of certain things. And like there's just so much duality swirling around. But like I am very grateful for both birth experiences, the order that they happened, like how everything, because obviously, as I'm touching on, like my son's birth was kind of the opposite of my daughter's. And like I am so glad I went into that scary experience, a seasoned mom and a seasoned birthing person. So that like that could help carry me through like a really scary situation.
Yeah, and with your first birth, did I pick up the phone, or I think one of the other midwives picked up the phone? Then it was very fast. It was like you took a shower, and then it was like, no, no, this game is on. Like I'm coming in.
Yeah.
What was it like working with a team of midwives? Because sometimes people get turned off from the birth center model where there are several midwives in care
Yeah.
because part of the premise is, well, you sort of fall in love with your midwife and you want this continuity. And what was it like being like, and we're in the middle of COVID. So depending on what was going on, a couple of midwives would be off or sick or taking care of family members. It was something, but it could have been
Yeah.
any one of four or five of us. How did that settle with you, considering all the anxiety that you were having?
Before she was born, it was a little hard because like obviously I connected to the different midwives in different ways, and as we've spoken about many times, I felt extremely connected to you. So like when talking to my husband about it, I was like obviously okay with anybody, but like I would prefer that it's a Tusa. And I ended up having everybody there because of what a chaotic night it was. Somebody else was giving birth before me, and so everybody had been up for a really long time when I entered in, like full on. So I think everybody kind of all hands on deck got called in because you guys were tired doing two births back to back like that.
Yeah, I think we had like three births back to back. I think you were the third one within
Yeah.
that 30-hour time span.
Yeah. Well, at least I was quick.
Yeah, I know. I know. It was that. She's 8. It was like, great. Great. We're under 24 hours. We love banker's hours birth for sure. That sort of, 9-hour mark. So having a baby during the pandemic, there was always this uncertainty of should there be a hospital transfer, whether urgent or non-emergent,
Hmm.
what would the COVID policy of the week be? And at that point, COVID
Hmm.
policy was changing literally every 48 hours. You
Yeah.
could bring a guest, you couldn't bring your guest. You could bring your partner,
Hmm.
and so many birthing people were birthing alone. There were
Hmm.
so many stories of horror and terror
Yeah.
during that time. It was
Yeah.
really a dark time in our country, but in the world and in
Yeah.
obstetrics and families, especially with all the anxiety you were having, given which midwife is it going to be? Who's on
Hmm.
call? Who's sick? Who's not sick? Are we going to get sick? Is the baby going to get sick?
Yeah.
What was it like for you to think there's a possibility of a transfer with every birth?
Kind of like we touched on a little earlier about midwifery care in general, I wasn't too anxious about if I had to give birth in a hospital I mean, I did have some anxieties about it, but I wasn't anxious about like that piece of it because I was like, if my midwives tell me that I need to go to the hospital, I'm going to the hospital because it is now an emergency situation. And like my daughter's safety is number one to me. So I am a big girl and I put on my big girl pants and we do what we have to do to keep her safe. And so like in that situation, I wasn't having a lot of anxiety because that was it's like her safety, number one. We're doing whatever needs to be done. And I'm not going to worry about it because she is top.
And then we had an interesting postpartum experience, right, with her.
Yes, that was very hard. There were a lot of emergencies after she was born. And in retrospect, Thankfully, none of the emergencies were super serious. But when you're in the throes of postpartum, especially your first postpartum, especially already starting with postpartum anxiety, and we were having severe sleep deprivation because of Luna's temperament, something scary was happening like every 24 hours, probably for the first like month. So it was really hard. When she was 3 days old, she had jaundice levels that were high enough that we had to go to the emergency room with her. And initially, I was like, I don't know a lot about jaundice, but I know a lot of babies get jaundice. That's not that serious. But then when I was told, because it was New Year's Eve, because of when she was born, nobody could treat her out of hospital for the jaundice, which normally would be an option, because of the holiday. And so we had to take her to the ER, which is like the worst place that you could take a newborn for several reasons.
In the best of circumstances when there's not a pandemic.
Yeah, and so I was hysterical the whole way there because I was like, we are gonna get sick. And like I just felt a lot in the beginning. Like I constantly was like emotional, going between breakdowns and disassociating because like I just had this gripping fear that I was gonna lose her, even in situations that were not a situation where she actually was in danger. I just could not. I was so emotional. I was so attached to her. And I was having these really bad postpartum, like mood disorder issues that, like, I just really, everything felt like somebody was coming for her and she was going to be gone.
And how did your postpartum period play out? Did you end up getting some help?
Yeah, so I kind of like was in therapy when I was pregnant because I wanted to make sure I was staying on top of my mental health. The anxieties were already there. That's very important to me is to try and stay mentally healthy. Um, and then during my postpartum, I was continuing to see my therapist, and she really helped me, as well as my midwives, you guys, really helped me. My husband's unwavering support really helped. Just like kind of all these people, these three parts of my life really came together to help me. But it took a very long time for me to be like mentally healthy, like months. It was really, really hard. It was probably not until she was maybe like 9 months old that I started to feel like I wasn't like having frequent panic attacks about her safety and like getting upset a lot. It got progressively better. It wasn't like intensely horrible that entire time, but I wouldn't say that I felt like any semblance of like normal mentally till she was like 9 months old.
And by the time she was 9 months old, you were starting to think about another baby, I assume.
Yeah. So my husband is kind of the same way I am, is that he also always wanted to be a dad. He's very nurturing. Like he has this like nurturing instinct that's just so beautiful and I feel like you don't or I've not experienced seeing very often in men. But like he really has this like instinct and he displays a lot of these behaviors and qualities and feelings that like I saw in myself as a postpartum mom. Like the way he would react when they cried is like he needed to help, he needed to fix it immediately. It made him on edge to see them distressed. I could see it like it felt like hormonally it was also affecting him. In similar ways it was affecting me. He wasn't having like postpartum issues the way I was, but like he was very connected to them. And, you know, he that was something that we aligned on a lot when we first started dating is he also always wanted to be a dad. And so we really kind of came together with the babies and so we had always planned to have them close together. So
Mm-hmm.
even before we got pregnant with Luna, we had obviously plans can always change, but we had already kind of been talking about family planning, like kind of like our whole relationship. It was always a conversation because this is something we both wanted so desperately, and both felt so called to. And so, yeah, so we had Luna and we knew that we wanted to have them close together for several reasons. So by that point, like we were already kind of talking about, even before we got pregnant with Luna, is like, you know, maybe at the year mark, we'll start talking about what that looks like. I initially was like, even wanted to do it even closer together, but when I educated myself more on breastfeeding, I realized that when you get pregnant, you lose your milk supply. Most people, I didn't know that. And so like that changed our family planning talks because I really wanted to provide Luna with exclusively breast milk until she was a year old. And so we ended up deciding we were going to try and get pregnant with Zane a little bit after she turned a year. And we were very, very lucky that both times it was fairly easy for us to kind of hit our planning marks without a ton of effort, which we know that we are very privileged to have because I know there's a lot of people that are not able to do that so easily.
And you opted for the midwifery model again.
I did, yes. The minute I had that positive test, I said, "Where's Atusa?" Literally to Joe. I was like, "Where's Atusa? I need to find her because I noticed that you were not still on the website of the birthing center I gave birth at Luna with." And so I was like, let me Google this. I need to find her. And it ended up that I saw that you were working with Amy, who also was not part of my prenatal care with Luna, but helped deliver Luna and did an amazing job. And she was even somebody that I didn't know that was in that room, just fell so into step with the team. And I felt so comfortable with her. And I felt like she really like commanded the room and took care of me. And so it was just kind of beautiful that you guys were already kind of working together. And so I reached out to see what we could make happen.
And Zane's late pregnancy started to feel different, right?
Oh, yeah. I could tell there was something off, even though nothing had happened yet. I think it was just intuition. I don't know if I was like able to tell something was going to happen or what, but like I really struggled that last month because I think also I was falling back a lot on, well, I've already experienced this and this, and this happened. So, like, it's got to be similar to that, right? Because it already happened to me and it's the same body and it's the same mix of genetics. And, like, Luna was born at 37 weeks. So I was like, he'll probably also, my family has a history of fast births and usually like the 38 mark, like everybody in my family on both sides seems to have given birth to their children at like the 38, 39 mark and like they had like under 6 hour births like and I think I just was like, well, that happened to me with Luna, so it's just that's the same thing's gonna happen. He'll probably come early December, like I think I was just setting myself up for, I just felt like that was going to happen and my intuition was wrong. And that made me start to doubt myself. And also just like fears started to creep in. It was a new experience now. I had never waited for labor before because Luna came at 37 weeks. Like I was not expecting her to come at 37 weeks. So like when that labor kicked in, I was like, okay, it's go time. I'm ready. But also like I wasn't waiting for her. And now it was like 37 goes by, 38 goes by, 39 goes by, like, and I was every day panicking more and more and more that like I was also having a lot of false labor. So I'd like psych myself up. Okay, it's time to go into labor again. Let's get that brain turned on. And then it would fizzle out. And like you do have to psych yourself up because there are their fears. What's going to happen during the birth? Is it going to be painful? Is blah, blah, blah going to happen? Like, and I had to be like, it's time to calm the mind. It's time to get in the zone. Like, we need to breathe. We need to whatever. And then that work would be like without result. And then that just amped up the anxiety when I wasn't having contractions more. And so, like, yeah, Luna was born at 37 weeks and she was 6 pounds, 12 ounces at 37 weeks. And when she came out, Amy said, like, this looks like a 30-weeker baby, a 38-week baby. This does not look like a 37-week baby. And so, like, I already had that anxiety. And knowing that boys genetically are typically a little bigger than female babies, I was like feeling that he's getting bigger as each week goes on. And she already was so big at 37 weeks. Like, am I going to deliver like a 10-pound baby? Can I do that? I'm very tiny. I'm only 5 feet tall. And I know that doesn't necessarily dictate it, but these fears creep in. Um, and so, like, it's very strange because I remember like completely crying to you guys every week, starting at like 37 weeks, like hysterical at my weekly appointments, being like, I'm afraid he's going to get stuck, which is what happened. I don't know why. I just was hanging on to this fear. I hope I didn't make it happen, but like it just, yeah, I just very much was scared that he was going to be okay.
What's so interesting about this is that during your labor, there were a couple of points where you said he's stuck. And as a midwife, we often hear that from mothers, but not second time mothers.
Hmm.
It's typically a first time thing where it just feels like I don't feel
Yeah.
this baby coming out. I feel this sort of progression of coming forward and then going back. And that can be a really scary feeling of like, this is not
Hmm.
happening. It's going backwards. But for a second time mom to say that, that caught our attention.
Yeah, I didn't feel that way with Luna. Like, and she was when I was delivering, when I was pushing, she was going back and forth to come out, and I didn't feel anxiety. I just was like, oh, it's just gonna help me not tear. Like, she's kind of just easing her way into the world. Like, I felt a sense of calm. But with Zane from the beginning, my contractions felt not right.
What did they feel like in your body? What was happening?
They didn't feel at all like they felt like with Luna. I felt the pressure, but a lack of sensation. So it just felt like generalized pressure from like my stomach down. Whereas with Luna, like it felt like it was in a direction and it was waving. And I just felt like I couldn't feel where he was. And the contractions felt weak, but painful. It's very hard to describe, but they did not feel right. And like I was vocalizing that to you guys, like that I was like, something does not feel right. Like my body doesn't feel right. And I was trying to calm myself down and trust the process and like, because I didn't know, I was trying to believe that like it was all going to be okay. And I felt like I was doing a good job of like calming my breathing down and walking and doing the things I needed to do. And Amy even said to me, she's like, you're not going to be able to turn that primal brain on the way you did with Luna. Like that typically doesn't happen. You're going to feel everything the second time. And I was like, okay, like I'm just going to trust. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, try and stay positive. But like I could tell the contractions were weak, they were non-specific, and I felt the urge to push, but then I felt like I couldn't synchronize with my contraction because it was like the pain would hit, but then I couldn't feel the contraction to like help my body follow it, if that makes sense.
And to the listener, we are going to be talking about shoulder dystocia. So it's one of the rare but very significant complications of birth. More unusual with a second baby, typically more common with a first baby. And one of the most feared obstetrical complications because it's a scenario where the head comes out, but then the shoulders don't restitute and align in a way to allow for the shoulders to come out. So the baby essentially gets lodged and is stuck. It's is held up by the pubic bone. Tell me what happened, Sammy.
So I felt the urge to push very early on. And I was kind of following that because it was my understanding, which could be incorrect. And I've had a lot of like guilt and shame associated with this feeling since then. But it was my understanding that I should just listen to my body and do what it says to do. That works so well with Luna, so I should just do that. And so I felt the urge to push early on, and I was just kind of trying to synchronize with the contractions and do that, but I don't think it was, I could feel something was wrong. I was telling you guys something was wrong. You guys were helping me try and move into different positions. I ended up on the birthing stool, trying to push him out. Amy asked if I wanted to be checked to where I was, and she said, "You're like 9, I think." But I was like, but I really feel like I have to push. And my water had not broken also, which was the strange, which was a not strange, a different experience. I know that isn't it typical that your water breaks later in labor, in most labors. So my situation with Luna was not as typical that it broke before my contractions started. But to me, that felt like the normal because that was my experience and it was the experience of my mom and my aunts and my grandma. And so Amy said she could feel that the bag was bulging, and I can't remember. You correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously my brain starts to get very hazy at this point. I believe she asked if I wanted her to break it, or she was maybe trying to feel Zane and it broke. I can't remember what happened, but the water ended up getting broken during this check. And it was like, you all were like, wow, that was like a movie. It's like a gallon on the ground, like literally so much water. Um, and then I struggled, but I pushed his head out. Um, and at that point, you guys told me that you could tell he was stuck. Um, and I was so tired and so scared. And Amy told me to stop pushing. And you guys were talking about maneuvers and that Joe, my husband, had to help you get me into different positions. And you told me to just stop moving and like go limp basically, or like follow your instructions, but don't push. And I was so exhausted that I was like, okay, I trust you guys to just take over and get him out. And I remember being vaguely aware of like his head between my legs and being scared that I was going to squish him moving into different positions. And then my memory goes black. And I don't remember any of the maneuvers you guys put me in. I don't remember anything that happened until the very end where I ended up laying on the bed and my husband was above me and I was looking up at him. And sorry.
Take your time, Sammy. It's a lot.
I'm totally okay to talk about it. It's just hard.
There's no
My
rush.
memory comes back at this point. I'm looking up at my husband and I just felt this wave crash over me of calm. And my brain was telling me that he wasn't going to make it, but that everything was going to be okay. But my heart just felt calm. Um, and so I didn't look down at him because I didn't want to see him like that. And I was trying to stop my husband from looking down. But I could see him look at me and look down and look at me. And I felt the urge to push again. And even though you guys didn't tell me to do it, I don't know why my body just did it. And you guys got him out. But then you were resuscitating him and I still wasn't looking because my husband said that he thought that I was going to die even though I was fine because I looked so like glazed over and I just was saying the scariest things and I was cognizant in the moment that what I was saying to him sounded scary and I was trying to comfort him but I didn't know how to make it not sound scary and I just kept being like everything's going to be fine, like very floaty, very out of it. I wasn't saying he was going to be fine because I didn't think he was going to be fine. I was saying everything's fine. It's okay. It's okay. Like I was trying to, I don't know. And I was like, don't look. And you said to me like, talk to your baby, Sammy, talk to your baby. And Joe and I were like, it's okay, Zane, breathe, as you guys were trying to resuscitate him. And I didn't look at him. Like I did not look. And I feel a lot of guilt over that. Cause like, what if he didn't make it? And like, he didn't even get to lock eyes with his mom.
It's so hard to look back at that moment.
And then he was out and he was breathing. And I laid back on the bed and you guys put him on my chest and he looked perfect. He looked like nothing happened to him. He looked so perfect and so peaceful. He smiled at me and like, I know it was reflexive because he was like 2 seconds old, but it felt like he was like saying to my soul, like, it's gonna be okay, Mom. I'm okay. And he is. He's amazing.
I remember we called for paramedics because by the third maneuver when he wasn't coming out, we also have protocols of how long a head can be out before we're like, okay, come on, baby. We need the rest of you to come out. So we did engage 911 and they showed up. But by the time they came, the baby was out and resuscitated and breathing and pink and happy.
And you know what's interesting about that moment, Atusa, is in all this chaos and all this crazy stuff that's happening, and I'm just bloody, naked, laying on this bed, not thinking about this at all, just looking at him, just totally absorbed in that smile he's giving me. And you took a little blanket when the paramedics came in and you just covered me up and covered us up. And I didn't tell you at the time because I was so absorbed in him, but what a moment of like love and care
Oh,
that you just wanted to like cocoon us and protect us. I really appreciate you.
Oh, really, really a privilege to be your midwife and to watch your strength and your courage and your resilience and your faith really, really get you through one of the hardest things that a mother should ever have to go through, which is one, the feelings in your body of something is not right, but okay, we have a head now. Then the
Yeah.
head is out, but I don't have an urge to push and my contractions feel weak. And the midwives are putting me into all of these different positions, which one of the reasons why unmedicated birth is so helpful is because the mother can move. The mother can help us. Because when someone's on an epidural and you have a shoulder dystocia, there's really not much she can do because she's numb from basically the ribs down. In a setting where the mom can follow directions and have no narcotics in her system and be very astute, you literally followed every single thing that we said. And we did 7 or 8 maneuvers over and over and over again before this baby was able to rotate and come down.
And I had to ask Joe about that because I just had a lot of guilt and shame. Like, why did my body not do what it was supposed to do? Like, did I make him stuck by pushing too hard, you know? And not pushing with my contractions, like all these things. If I did this different, would this not have happened to him? Like, I just feel terrible. That's how he had to come into the world, and that I can sit there and watch Luna's birth video a million times, and like I can't watch his. Um, I just felt very guilty, and I had to ask Joe. I was like, did I did I make it worse? I don't remember. And he was like, no, you followed everything they asked. You moved your body. I was like, was I not fast enough? Would have he been stuck less time if I was? There's a lot of that that goes on when you have a situation like this.
There is absolutely nothing that you could have done better. Nothing. Not during your pregnancy, not during your labor, not during your delivery. This is an obstetrical complication that happens when the babies come out and they don't turn at the right angle. That's it. It's physics. It's physics.
Yeah. And I do think like it's like I'm proud of myself as well for a lot of things. Like there's a lot of duality in this situation. It's not that I'm all hard on myself. But part of it like I think is my not necessarily my size, but like the orientation of my pelvis maybe played a part in this because when you watch back Luna's video after I delivered her head, she doesn't just slip out like they say the next push they just slip out. Like Heba, who was catching her, you see her take her head and her shoulders, and I hear you on the video direct her, no, this way, and go to pull her out. And like, there's a there's a lot of gratitude and stress as well that like if she had gone to term the same thing probably would have happened to her just given my given just my body's orientation and the size of my babies. Like, I think that this is just something, unfortunately, that my body was maybe predisposed to. And I was very lucky that she came early and that wasn't able to grow much bigger to the point where the same thing would have happened to her potentially. That is like a risk, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, with shoulder dystocia is that like you are at higher risk for it happening again if it's happened to you already because of the physics. And so this is kind of in the reverse. I think I was lucky that that didn't happen with Luna because all the right conditions allowed everything to seem very perfect and normal.
How much did Zane weigh?
He wasn't even that large, in my opinion. He was 8 pounds, 13 ounces. Like, I thought that it is my understanding that the regular range for a male baby is between 7 and 9 pounds. He's on the larger end, but that's still in the normal range.
Still within normal range. I have a theory about what happened. I think that you had a lot of water. And I think that when the water broke, he came down so fast
Yeah.
that he wasn't able to orient coming out of the pelvis.
That's definitely possible. And we had the added complication. I don't know if this was related to the water. I know it's not related to the shoulder dystocia, but that he had the true knot in his cord.
He really did. And Zane is a miracle in so many ways
He
because
is.
babies who have that true knot sometimes don't even make it to labor.
Yeah.
They are born sleeping
Yeah.
and they are, it's just Zane was meant to be here.
He is so strong. Like I always like to include in this, and I know it sounds like I'm bragging, but after what happened to him and I think we deserve
Please
to.
brag. Please
He
brag.
is a miracle, a strength, an incredibleness in every sense of the word. This little baby was like breastfeeding like a champ 2 hours after this horrific thing happened to him. Like, latch no problem, gulp, 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 drinking it down. Didn't lose a single ounce at his 1 week check in. He
Wow.
kept all of his weight.
And that's with sharing the breast with his older sister, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm still 9 months into tandem nursing. Yeah.
It's amazing.
He was crawling at 5 months old. He is now not even 9 months old, and he is walking independently. He babbles, he smiles. He's the happiest baby I've ever met in my life. He just is so happy to be here and so happy to be part of this family. And like, he brings me such a sense of calm. I had no postpartum issues. He just is a miracle. Like, I think in the beginning, I was still like it was I had that comparison of with Luna. I was not having like a postpartum mood disorder, which is largely hormone driven, correct?
Right.
So like I was not having that with Zane. But obviously, we were upset about what happened with his birth. It felt very much like there were a million different paths in which we didn't get to bring him home, and we somehow got guided onto the one path in which not only did we get to bring him home, but he is healthy 100%. He didn't have any brain damage or any issues, which is a risk with a situation like this. And like we were guided, I really feel guided by both our guardian angels from our family that's not here, and I call you guys my earth angels,
Oh,
guided onto the one path in which he is totally fine from a very scary situation. And like, I just feel so much gratitude. And like, every day I look at him and I'm like, you are a miracle and a joy and a light in this world. And like, how endlessly lucky am I that you're totally okay?
and I remember when we did so there are so many risks associated with this, including brain damage from lack of oxygen, including babies dying, and including brachial plexus injury, which is
Mm-hmm.
an injury to the nerves that are in the shoulders and arm, which can happen, by rotating the baby in a certain way during
Mm-hmm.
the delivery. So we put you into a lot of positions where midwives are trained all the time about how to manage shoulder dystocia. I do a little shoulder dystocia refresher about every month where I just, go over the
Yeah.
maneuvers, check in. We have drills about shoulder dystocia. We have drills about resuscitating babies because often after a dystocia, you have a baby that will not breathe. They're born limp, they're born blue, and it takes them a minute or longer. In his case, we were resuscitating him, I think, for 7 minutes, which is a long recess. And the beauty of this story, there's so many beauties to this story other than just your sheer resilience and your strength and your partner's who was rock solid through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Never a moment of doubt or not being able to do what we were asking. He was just right there with us. We were all working to
Yeah.
help him come
And
out.
he says in hindsight, because we've talked about it a lot, he says, Atusa jumped right in. He said she knew solidly what to do and not a second to spare, and she was on it, boom, boom, boom. Like there was no other option. He was getting here safely, and she was doing it with her like sheer will. And he struggled a lot more than me mentally afterwards because he saw everything. I saw nothing. I blacked out, and then I came to, and I couldn't look down at him. So like he saw everything. So he couldn't, for the first week, every time he'd look at him and I, he would cry. And like he felt so solidly about the way you guys handled it. And like he said, you guys were incredible.
I think there's situations where you just know, for me, and I have a deep faith in what I call my higher power to be God, but God literally guiding you, like like do obviously we're trained and obviously we practice and we do drills, but when you're actually faced with it,
Yeah.
I actually feel my hands being guided to do the next right thing. And
Yeah.
part of being a birth worker is that you can still do all the right things and still have a bad outcome.
Yeah.
And that is one of the hardest parts of our job. Is in most jobs, if you do everything right, when you hire your accountant, if all of those numbers match up, then your books are straight. If you pay your taxes on time, your taxes are good. If you have an architect who draws your house out right, typically it comes out right. With birth, there are so many unknowns and such a soul journey for not only the mother, but the baby and the partner and everyone in that room, that the unknowns are part of what makes a lot of people not do this job.
Yeah.
But in this situation, there was such synchronicity between Amy and I, where we just, we knew what each other's jobs were. And with a 7-minute recess, it was like, come on, Zane, you got to breathe. You got to breathe. And I remember while you were pushing, I don't know why, but I looked up what his name meant because I knew that you were going to name him Zane. And his name means gift. It means gift of God. And while we were resuscitating him, I was just talking to him and I said, you are a gift of God and I need you to breathe because you need to be here. And he came too. So by the time the paramedics came in, and after there is an obstetrical emergency, the room does not look angelic and peaceful
No.
and tight. Okay, there was a lot going on. The
I
tub was
felt
still
that
up.
way, but it didn't look that way.
There was bleeding, there's sheets, I mean, it's a lot. And we had such a wonderful team of paramedics who stood back and trusted us to do what we were doing, complimented us on the work we did. And when mother and baby were stable, offered to take you. And when you said, you know what, I feel good, I want to stay, my baby is stable, we're going to see our pediatrician soon. They gracefully left, they congratulated you, and they were part of the
Yeah.
team. There was no, you're doing it wrong. You've made
Mhm.
a irresponsible decision. And now look where you're in. We have a train wreck, which is actually two of my least favorite words put together. Train wreck is what people call births that essentially don't go according to plan in an out of hospital setting. And there was none of that. There was just kindness and respect
Yeah.
for our skill. And they were like, wow, you all are managing this. You don't need us. We're out. Right.
Yeah.
And the other beautiful part of this was that once we did your baby's head to toe newborn exam, one of his reflexes was not where it was supposed to be. He was not raising one of his arms.
Mhm.
And so it was a situation of, okay, well, do we need to transfer to the hospital because he's not moving his arm, which could be a very clear sign of brachial plexus injury. But I think in his case, it was his arm was hurting because it was stuck under that pubic bone for so many
Mhm.
minutes. And thank God it came to. A few days later, he started moving his arm and bringing it to his face and lifting it above his head, and he's perfectly
Yeah.
fine. But it was your pediatrician that said, I'm happy to see you. Once you leave your birth setting, just come straight to my office.
Yeah, and she took an x-ray on him and she said everything looked. They had actually an x-ray machine at her office. We love our pediatrician. She's excellent. And yeah, they had an x-ray set up at their office. And so they like took a look at him. And when the paramedics, I did feel like they were great. I mean, I was very tuned into Zane. So like I wasn't super tuned into anything else that was happening. But I didn't feel any intrusion from them on the situation. I was grateful that they were there. And when they asked if I wanted to go, I was willing to go if that's what needed to happen for him. And there was so much trust flowing in the room that like I just really looked to you and Amy. And I was like, does he need to go? What are my risk benefit, you know, what is my assessment here on like, and we kind of discussed together as a team, and I trusted that, and we called the pediatrician, and she said she could do basically anything they do at the hospital, and if anything came up strangely, we would have just taken him from the hospital. And what really made the choice for me was that there was no urgency. Is like, if he has this injury, waiting a couple hours is not going to change the outcome of this injury. And my biggest concern was, is he mentally okay? I was so much less concerned about him having this like potential nerve damage or physical injury to his arm, and just so scared that like he was going to have like lifelong damage from what happened. And so I was so tuned into him and like connecting with him and locking eyes with him. And, I just felt calm looking at him, because even though nothing was indicating that he was going to be totally fine, I just felt that energy off of him. So it was very calming to just zone in on him.
Would you do another out of hospital birth?
I don't think so. Not because I don't wholeheartedly believe in them, or my opinion has not changed on how amazing I think the midwifery care model is. But part of the midwifery care model is that high risk individuals are not candidates for out of hospital births. And because of my history, I now fall under that category. So I don't think I would take, I think if I decided to have another baby, my most ideal setting would be to find an OB that has experience with shoulder dystocia, that is kind of respectful of my out of hospital history and my desires to want to continue to try and do things as unmedicated or as less medical intervention as possible. And I would love to bring you or Amy as a doula in that situation, because you are my trusted birthing people. And, you know, I think that element is still very important.
I think the beauty is that you can still have midwifery care and then have collaborative care for the delivery and then come back to the midwifery model. Was there ever a moment during the emergency where you were like, wow, I shouldn't have chosen this?
No. I mean, in fact, I had the feeling a lot of like, my goodness, what would have happened to him if I wasn't here with these knowledgeable, trusted people that did what they had to do. I mean, I fully believe in this emergent situation, the doctors would have gotten him out, but would he be okay? To what extent? What tools would they have used that potentially might have got him out faster, but hurt his brain? I don't know. Like, I'm speculating. This is all speculation.
Yeah.
Like, it could have been a great experience. I just don't have that experience. And, like, I prefer to try and do things with as little medical intervention as possible. And in this situation, it absolutely would have been necessary. And so I think my what if is like, would he still have been okay? Because the situation I was in, he is okay.
Oh, so many duality is such a great word. So much duality with all of this.
I think also there's a piece of this that, like, when you're in midwifery care, you have a relationship with your
Mm.
midwives. It's not like strictly patient client sort of thing. And so, like, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there is a piece, there's the professional hat, but then there's also the emotional hat of like, that we were very emotionally intertwined with you and Amy. And you, I think, felt that way about our family as well. So there's a piece of it is like, in my professional mind, I need to get this baby out, but also like, this is a baby that we feel an
Wow.
emotional connection to, and that's an added layer. And we felt you guys were emotionally connected to my baby, whereas like a doctor is not going to feel emotionally connected to your baby in typical setting, I would
Wow,
think.
that's so powerful, Sammy. Your story is incredible. Zane's journey is incredible, and so many different feelings wash over me as I go through that day again. What was the difference in your postpartum recovery?
It was like magical. Like, I think he's just magical. Like, I don't know. I had no postpartum mood disorders. I felt this same sense of calm that like washed over me when I came back to when he was being delivered at the end. Like, before I even knew what was going to happen to him. And like the definite calm I felt when he was on my chest looking healthy and perfect and smiling at me, like that just continued. Like he just continued to show me in these little ways of like, I'm going to keep all my weight. I'm going to be a strong nurser, which with my daughter, it took like 3 months for us to comfortably be able to nurse. I fought through like blood and pain, excruciating. Like it was very hard start to nursing. And it was only through my bullheaded determination that we were able to get onto like a great journey because the beginning was very hard. And with Zane, it wasn't like that. It was like he latched on perfect. It was like this blissful, easy thing. And Amy said to me, because I was expressing my fears that like he would not be okay because of what happened. Amy said, I can't tell you for sure, but a baby that is strong breastfeeding is typically not having neurological wires crossed in the wrong places.
He's magical.
And he just continued to show, didn't lose any weight, smiles for days, the happiest, most easygoing soul, just brings so much joy to everybody he comes across. Like people are always saying, wow, he is so happy. And he makes you feel so happy inside, like anybody who comes across him. Um, and yeah, he just continued to like be super advanced in his milestones and like be so happy. And it just made me feel so calm and so confident. Like he just instilled this like strength and confidence in me that like I didn't even know I had given my like history with anxiety.
How's Joe doing?
He's doing so much better. He's somebody that like not he shakes a lot of it off. Like in all the time I've known him, like he never gets embarrassed. Like he doesn't usually get very stressed out. And it's not because he's pushing things under the rug. He just naturally is a very easygoing person. Like he just is a very happy person. He just has a happy outlook on life. And like is just easygoing. He just was born that way. And like this was horrific for him because we're his whole world and he struggled so hard. Like I touched on before, like probably worse than me. Like he literally could not stop crying for like 2 weeks. Every single time he looked at us, he would cry. So he was definitely pretty traumatized by the situation. But he also, I think, took a lot of comfort in how good we were doing. I think not just Zane, but me as well. Like he was such a rock during how difficult my postpartum was with Luna. So I think it made him feel good that I was okay, in that sense. And that Zane was continuing to smile at us every day and be such a strong eater. Also, he was just naturally an easier going sleeper. So like that gave us an easier mentality because the sleep deprivation part of it was not there the way it was before. And that's like, there's a reason
For
that's a torture
sure.
device. Like, it's sleep
Yeah.
deprivation is hard. And we do it 1,000 times over because we very much believe in responding to our children and like comforting them. And that emotional comfort is just as important as all the physical care needs that they have. But it's hard.
Yeah.
Especially when with our first was very high contact needs, and she would sleep wonderfully, but she had to be full body contact. She wouldn't take a little hand hold, a little back rub. That was not going to fly with her. Whereas Zane was like, I'll hold your hand, like
Yeah.
I'll smile my way to sleep.
Oh, sweet cherubic babies. They're both so cherubic. There
Yeah.
is a prayer that I love that says something to the effect of, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. What do you think this experience is going to allow you to do for other birthing people? Do you see yourself in that space? Do you feel there's a reason you had this experience?
I do, and we definitely talked about this in some of our processing in the postpartum, because again, that's a wonderful thing about midwifery care is that like you're not just getting physical care, you're having emotional care as well, and support, and connection, and that continues after the baby's born. It's not just like we'll see you at 6 weeks and tell you what birth control you should take. Like it's very much a like healing journey as well on the other side of the birth. And so we spoke about that as well. Even with Luna, like I felt very called to this entire experience and connected to like all the people that had birthed before me and the people that were birthing at the same time as me and the parents that are connected to these beautiful new souls entering the world, and like how it's a hard time because of like just the culture in the United States and like the lack of importance on like attachment and all that. So like it and the lack of like support and disconnectedness. And so it's been swirling around in my head since Luna was born. And I did go back to work with her in like a corporate, I work in music, but a corporate setting. And that was a very, very difficult transition. And I constantly felt called back to this motherhood journey, this wanting to connect with other people on this journey and all the things they were going through, hear their stories, support them as best I could. I'm like Joe always makes fun of me because I'm very involved in like my La Leche League group and like my other like mom groups that I'm in, because I just like I feel such fulfillment from like supporting people going through this. Any new person I see that's like pregnant, I'm like, how can I help you? How can I support you? How can I give you love and connection during this vulnerable time? Because it's hard when you go without that. Um, and so I'm still figuring that out. I tried to go back to work after Zane was born, and it wasn't working. Like I think that we were not being me and my employer were not being mutually beneficial to each other. Like I just feel called more to help them. So I'm figuring that out. I've taken a step back, and I'm focusing on raising my kids full time and managing our household full time. And I would like to start educating myself in other ways and what that looks like in a career of just connecting with people and helping people, because I just feel, especially birthing people and new parents, and I just feel very called to that. So it's still an early seed of an idea, but I think that's what I'm meant to do. And this experience, I think, even more so solidified that is like I've had this beautiful ideal experience and I've had this horrifically scary experience. And there's just so much gray in between. Not everything's black and white, and not every experience is going to resonate the same way for one person. And I just want to like hold space and support all of that. And just, there's no one size fits all. And I feel like that piece of the conversation is not always there. Is like what's beautiful for one person is a nightmare for another person. And like, how can we better support parents keeping that in mind, that all these care decisions that we make as birthing people, as parents, are not one size fits all. And like, I just want to create that beautiful feeling that you've created for me in both my pregnancies, um, and that other people that have been part of my care team and my husband. Like, I just, there's been a lot of like overarching lack of support in my life, but then there's also these beautiful people that have made such a profound difference, and I want to do that for as many people as I can.
You know, Sammy, birth changes us, right? The bridge to motherhood each
Mm,
and every time yields a new person. It's the birth of the
yeah.
mother or the person as much as it is the birth of the child.
Yeah. I think every step of like these new experiences where I'm learning new things and I'm growing in this, like becoming a parent, I think it just has led me to like a new plane of
Yeah.
understanding, a different perspective I didn't see before. And like, I just want to help support people through these huge moments of like vulnerability and transition, and like new understanding, like a new enlightenment almost. Like it's like the veils
Layers.
keep
Yeah.
getting lifted. And there's like so much raw, but there's also so much beauty. And like in the right support system, that's like a really amazing thing.
You have so much light. Zane is definitely a gift and you are a gift.
Yes.
And Luna and Zane really have chosen the right parents. I'm not sure which manual they read, but
Mm.
did they pick the right parents. And I'm so honored to have been their midwives and your midwife. And just you and Joe are incredible people. And I look forward to watching
Oh,
your
thank you.
children grow, and really am confident that you are going to help people with the seed that has been planted from your experience in becoming a mom and raising these beautiful children. And really, it takes a lot of courage to step out of corporate America and say, I'm going to raise my children. And I want to be completely
Yeah.
hands on. And I know it's not easy. And I see you doing it. And I feel so overcome with gratitude that Zane is healthy and that
Hmm.
we had a beautiful outcome with this despite all of the adversity.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it's not easy. I'm sending you a massive hug, and I'm just embracing your whole family with so much love and light, and I look forward to seeing your face soon live in person.
Yes, we adore you endlessly. You are so woven into the fabric of our family and eternally grateful for every single little experience that you have been a part of, such a
Thank
huge
you.
part
It's my
of.
privilege. Thank you, Sammy. Much love. Thanks for listening to the Mamatoosa podcast on the Industry Plant Podcast Network. Mamatoosa is hosted by me, Atusa Benji, and produced by Josh Stretton Carlson. Chris Agnew is our audio editor, and our theme music is composed by Mary Lalazarian. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving us a review and subscribing. See you next Tuesday.